viewed as a ready source of hydrocarbon. We've reversed ourselves on that policy. A little more salt in the wound. Glad y'all ate before I came. I'm sure you were too. Moratorium may have been issued for deep water drilling only, but there's a de facto moratorium on shallow water drilling as well. 33 deep water drilling rigs do remain idle, but in addition to that, 14 of the 46 available jackup rigs in the Gulf are idle because of delays in permitting. According to the Shallow Water Energy Security Coalition, the permitting situation does not change. 25 rigs will be idle by the end of this month, and 30 will be idle by end of September. Each of these rigs employs about 100 people and supports many additional indirect jobs at supply boat companies and oilfield service companies and other businesses. The news doesn't get any better. In fact, last week, the Interior Department said that they were adding yet another layer of paperwork and regulation dealing with what are called waivers from environmental reviews, which will create more paperwork and the delays of getting these rigs back to work. Next slide. This permitting freeze is being taken on a 60-year-old industry that actually is considered low risk. In fact, in the last 15 years, 11,000 plus wells were drilled in shallow water. A total of 15 barrels of oil were spilled. So essentially, as of today, the entire Gulf of Mexico domestic offshore oil industry is at a standstill, waiting and hoping for relief. It's obvious from the drilling moratorium and slowdown of the shallow water permits that this was a severe overreaction to the BP incident. Those in Washington have said that it's not safe to drill. So what's the next step? What's the next target? We are. If it's not safe to drill, then it's certainly not safe to refine or transport oil and gas. And we'd be foolish to think else, otherwise, that we're not next on the list. You have to stop and think about what is going on. What's the real motivation here? And I can only speculate and pose a couple of broad areas. Is it purely political? Is it because the industry, particularly the independent producers, have supported and financed Republican candidates more so over Democrat time, over election times? Is that possibly it? Is it purely philosophical, which it certainly could be? Is it that we believe industry can bring around changes through competition and growth rather than through federal regulations and mandates? I honestly don't know what the motivation is, because it is so counterintuitive, it just doesn't make any sense. It's like killing the horse that you're riding in hopes that killing it is going to create incentives to breed some other type of horse. It just doesn't make any sense. Next slide. The government claims that they're putting safety over profit, and that's why we stopped the industry. Federal government did not shut down the entire auto industry when a number of Toyota owners reported runaway accelerators leading to accidents. They could at least shut down GM. They own GM. Or we own GM. But can you imagine the outrage if the government tried to shut down the auto industry? The headlines: Washington shuts down auto industry. What were they thinking? The lead story for days. I bet we'd even get Anderson Cooper to go to Detroit. The outrage would be significant. But why isn't the same outrage being expressed when government, with the stroke of a pen and without due process, shuts down an entire industry? The federal government has yet to shut down all farming or food processing plants. If one reports E. coli or salmonella, and I'm pretty sure you can still go to H-E-B and buy eggs today. They certainly haven't grounded all the airplanes after an aviation disaster. In fact, all the safety measures introduced in airports and on airplanes after 9/11 were done while the aviation industry continued to operate. The moratorium and other actions, next please, by the federal government are leading us away from any possibility of energy independence and certainly threatening our energy security. The president is sending the wrong message about America's energy future. And what about those communities elsewhere that rely on the work that we do in Southeast Texas for oil and gas and associated products? What about Aunt Maggie in Newark? What about folks in Iowa? We work every day to deliver reliable energy products and quality end products that are crucial to individual businesses, manufacturing facilities, and residential lifestyles across the country. Do our customers understand the gravity of the situation we are currently facing? Do they understand how they will be impacted? They gladly receive our natural resources and the end products made from these resources, but have they received our message of alarm over the current short-sighted policies being carried out by the federal government? How can our oil get to Massachusetts so easily, but our value-added messages not make it there? Do they understand that the comfortable home that people are in, or that the cars that they drive, are all made possible by our gas? Next one. That's why it's up to the folks in this room to deliver this message. As a community, we need to decide where we are on this issue. Are we standing on the sidelines, or are we going to charge them? Knowing the spirit of folks here, we're probably going to do a lot of mountain charging over the next few months. And so my challenge to you is that you know the oil and gas industry, both the risk and the benefits, better than anyone else in the country. And you also understand that oil and gas industry is integral to your quality of life. It's who we are. For generations, this community has been at the forefront of this industry, leading the way in production and research and development. And it's crucial that you become leaders in this fight. You know exactly what the U.S. can do in terms of oil and gas production because we live it every day. You know about the safety standards. You know that we have one of the safest industries that exists. You would not send your husbands and wives and brothers and sisters and grandchildren to work day in and day out if it wasn't safe. The most imminent threat that we all face is the impact of the potential loss of 79,000 or 80,000 jobs that are directly associated with oil and gas in this area, an economic engine that injects more than $4 billion into your economy. Many of you in this room rely on industry as main supporters of your businesses, your schools, your town. Where would your community be if the oil and gas industry no longer existed? Think about that for a minute. Do you think that Beaumont could survive a mass exodus or a complete shutdown of the refineries? What about, more realistically than a complete shutdown, a lack of investment? What about no investment? How would we operate under that scenario? Where would the school districts get money to renovate, remodel, or expand campuses? Where would the fire department get the money to improve communications technology or replace outdated equipment? High-paying jobs in refineries were going. Who would the doctors treat to compensate for the loss in private health insurance patients? Who would buy homes from local realtors? Who would borrow money from the bank? Who would buy a car from a local dealership? Who would donate at the local church? Texans are resilient. You all understand how difficult it is to bounce back from setbacks and slowdowns. You know what it's like to live without power. You know what it's like to have no fuel or lights. And it's hard enough to manage natural disasters like a hurricane, but to have to face these unnatural disasters of an anti-oil and gas administration in Congress may be simply too much for us to survive. The policies being proposed and implemented today will take decades to undo, and that's why it's critical that we act today. So as stated at the beginning of the speech, we need you to find your voice, to speak out against the administration's flawed anti-oil and gas policies. We need to pick up the megaphone and proudly declare that Beaumont, Texas is my town. and that these are my jobs, and we will not stand by while poor policy decisions are made that destroy both. We're going to launch a campaign called My Town, My Job, My Voice. Click one more slide, please. To unite all the business organizations and communities that are impacted by the current regulatory policies that are being placed on oil and gas. This is not a big oil campaign. This is about you and me and all of us. It's about the grocery store clerk and the bank teller and the school teacher and the nurse. All who will be hurt by the crippling of the oil and gas industry. We want you to take this campaign message to your employees, your co-workers, your neighbors, and your family members. Challenge them to get involved and keep this issue relevant. None of them are immune from the actions that are being taken by the federal government. You must tell them that this is part of our fight for survival. It's a fight for our livelihood, and it's a fight for continuing our way of life. And hopefully we're ready to come together and speak with one voice, but it starts here. And it will only end when we can come back together knowing that our town and our jobs are secure once more. So again, please join us. Like I said earlier, this isn't just business anymore. This is personal. Thank you for your time. Jim is going to present the next piece.